Welcome to what is definitely our final Black History Month edition of Freedom Friday. Thanks to all of you who reminded me last week that there is another week in February. This week. So let's get into it. What if I told you that over 200 years before Toussaint L'Ouverture led the slave uprising and founded the country of Haiti, another enslaved African defeated the Spaniards and established a free community which still exists today? His name? Gaspar Yanga. We have all heard of the exploits of Toussaint Louverture and those who came after him in defeating major European powers to establish the free nation of Haiti. We studied that some months ago. But 200 years before them, there was Gaspar Yanga. The Encyclopedia of African and African Experience has this to say about him. Yanga, alive during the late 16th and early 17th centuries, was leader of a group of Maroons or runaway slaves that became the only group of blacks in colonial Mexico to secure their freedom through rebellion and to have that freedom guaranteed by law. It is often not well known that during this period, New Spain, as the Spaniards called Mexico, contained the second highest number of enslaved Africans after Brazil. Scholars note that these were the peak years of brutal enslavement in Mexico. Spanish accounts, derived from his followers, state that before being captured and sold into slavery, Yanga was of royal lineage, likely among the Akan people in what is today the country of Ghana. Yanga himself confirmed that if the Spaniards had not kidnapped and enslaved him, he would have been king in his own country. Unfortunately, this experience was far from unique. So many of Africans' greatest sons and daughters were consumed by this dehumanizing practice, ripping away the very foundations of the continent's ability to construct a prosperous and independent future for itself. Around 1570, Yanga escaped bondage along with others and established a Maroon community known as the Palenque. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's Spanish. And they hid away in the Orizaba Mountains of New Spain, Mexico. These were the highest mountain ranges in the country, and there, beyond the easy reach of Spanish authorities, his people built fortified settlements, cultivated crops, and organized themselves under structured leadership. Yanga functioned as their king, and as a true leader, and using the tactics learned as a prince before enslavement, he organized his community into farmers and warriors. They referred to themselves as Yanguicos. Estimates number their community to as much as 500, comprising mostly formerly enslaved Africans and a few indigenous Indians. For more than 30 years, the Yanguicos defeated Spanish attempts at destroying them. While the farmers cultivated crops, the warriors, led by an Angolan commander, Yanga appointed over them, scouted the jungle for enemy spies attempting to locate and destroy their community. The commander carried the name of the enslaver from whom he escaped, Francisco de la Matosa. They also conducted raids on Spanish caravans to replenish their supplies, but also maintained internal discipline and defensive strength. In general, they made life very difficult and dangerous for the Spanish colonizers. In 1609, the Spanish crown felt it had had enough and launched a significant military campaign to crush the community. It was led by one Pedro Gonzalo de Herrera. Charles Henry Rowell, editor of the journal Callaloo, writes, "What is most fascinating about the forays of Gonzales de Herrera's soldiers into the mountainous region of Orizaba is that their military failure ultimately forced the Spaniards to seek a truce with Yanga and his followers. What an embarrassment that the Spaniards' well-trained and mighty military force was defeated by a group of rebels. Their plenitude of military weapons and training could not crush Yanga and his fellow freedom fighters who had none of the firepower or the military training of the Spaniards. As victors, Yanga and his group dictated the terms of the truce. They specified in the agreement the location of their town, that they were to have a charter and a town council with Yanga, of course, as their governor. They also demanded, and I quote, that no Spaniard will have a house in or stay within the town excepting during the market days, Mondays and Thursdays. They wanted their own community with their own leadership. Lesson learned. They also agreed to return any new escaped slaves to their community. A difficult decision, no doubt, but they obviously felt it was necessary to preserve their town from future attacks. So in 1618, Spain formally recognized the settlement as a free town under colonial jurisdiction. The community became San Lorenzo de los Negros, later renamed rather, Yanga, in honor of their fearless leader. Historians regard it as the first legally recognized free black town in the Americas. Yanga's achievement was not merely escape. One could argue it was statecraft. He transformed resistance into sovereignty. Long before Haiti's revolution or Brazil's Palmares reached their height, Yanga compelled a European empire to acknowledge black autonomy. Today, the community of Yanga remains a municipality in the Veracruz region of Mexico. This slide contains a statue of Yanga located in that town square. However, Dr. Cruz Carretero, a member of the community, has noted, to this day, she says, the government of Mexico has not included lessons about Yanga for our children in our own schools. It is a sad reality that most Mexicans, she says, have never even heard of him. Like so many others before and after him, whose deeds and exploits have been marginalized and replaced by harmful and false stereotypes of Africans as passive recipients of their fate, Yanga remains unknown and unrecognized. Yanga's life reminds us that enslaved Africans were not passive victims of history, but political actors capable of military strategy, diplomatic negotiation, and community formation. Historian Ted Vincent observes that in the fight for Mexican independence from Spain, rebellious enslaved people from Veracruz, where the Yanga community is located, were some of the most ferocious fighters who went on fighting until independence was won. Afro-Mexicans played a vital role in Mexican liberation, a fact not well known, a powerful testimony to the legacy of El Yanga. Though archival details of his personal life remain sparse, we don't know his birth, his legacy also endures in the living town that bears his name, a testament to freedom secured through courage, leadership, and unyielding resolve. In a future episode, we will return to the remarkable contributions of African people to Mexican independence. Deuteronomy 24:17 and 18 says, "Do not despise the foreigner or the fatherless of justice, or take the cloak of a widow as pledge. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. That is why I command you to do this," says God. As descendants of enslaved people, Scripture demands that we remember that we came from not so much that we can take revenge, but to cultivate compassion for those who suffer as foreigners, as orphans, and as people being trafficked, because in doing so, we will be honoring the one who is our true deliverer, Christ Himself. And secondly, honoring our ancestors like El Yanga, who fought for justice and freedom. I appreciate you taking the time to join me today on Freedom Friday. Remember to subscribe and share it. You will be helping to spread the word, supporting the reconstruction of our history and identity. Until next week, then, walk good and stay free. This is Freedom Friday, where we tell the whole story.